Back on Golden Goal, and we have an exciting slate for this weekend to cover. As always, I'm joined by Martino Puccio. You can hear him on the State of the Play podcast. Also see him through The Athletic with their soccer betting. Martino, we have a big weekend ahead of us, so I'm glad you could join us.
Oh, I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad we get to get in probably the biggest game of the
Mhm.
Italian season so far. So I'm just super excited to talk everything.
And we had a pretty good slate last week too. Just real quick covering on that. We talked about Barcelona probably picking up a win. Had Real, had Benzema to score. You had the AC Milan game as well. The tough one was Real's money line, but other than that, pretty good slate, I got to say.
Pretty good slate, and I felt so bad for you when there were red cards straight up instead of the yellows in the
Oh,
Atletico Barcelona one. But that was just typical. I mean, again, trust the process over the course of time.
mhm.
Benzema, it's okay. It happens. You miss a 1v1 chance, but we got the totals and a couple of other a little unlucky in the Inter game. But I mean, just good overall weekend and hoping to continue that.
Yeah, let's just jump right into what we've got. We got some Prem action for you, and we have some Serie A. We're gonna start in Italy. This game's going on Friday, 2:45 p.m. Eastern time. It is a clash of the top two. It doesn't get a lot better than this. It's Juventus and it's Napoli. Napoli with a win today or in the game, can really make life hell for Juve and basically stomp out any chances of them taking the title. Tell me what you're thinking for this game and which direction you're leaning in.
Yeah, I mean, this is, like I was saying, one of the biggest matches that you'll see in Serie A this season. Again, Napoli only one loss the entire year. That was against Inter away. Juve haven't conceded in 8 matches, and that was without one of their best defenders last week. So again, it's a great job by Juve. I think they're eventually going to have to regress to the mean, and I think these are one of the matches. Federico Chiesa, obviously Juve's best player in my opinion when healthy. Got the assist late last week, but
Mhm.
playing like that isn't sustainable against a side like Napoli. If he's not going to go for a full 90 minutes, same thing with Dusan Vlahovic, it's going to be difficult for Juve to win this one. I know we both kind of like the under in this because of
Mhm.
how well Juve's been playing defensively. They're on a historic pace. Just to put it into perspective, this is the best defensive league that's ever existed in this sport over the course of its entire history. No one's done what they've done. And they've had some of the best defenses of the past 10 to 15 years at Juve.
Yeah.
They're at a historical pace. My thing is, it's eventually going to catch up to them. They'll slow down. I think this is one of those matches. And again, for future purposes, Matthias, Napoli get
Mhm.
this win. I really think they're locking up this league, and we're almost at the
Yeah.
halfway point. It's going to take a historical collapse. So if you're looking at future markets as well, I think this one's the deciding factor. I think you can
Mhm.
get a great number for some of the teams on the outside of Napoli. But again, for me, under 2.5. And then, I do see some sort of combo where there's an under 2.5 in Napoli that could get to plus 310 on FanDuel. I think that's great value. You're talking about a 2-0 Napoli win. Um, and then also just under 2.5 on a solo play. Like Napoli have been scratching out some results here, low scoring since the return of the World Cup from the World Cup, and then again with Juve, no one's scoring on them. So under 2.5 feels like the safest.
Yeah, you mentioned on last week's show how Juve was really going to be scrapping out some results as well, and that ended up hitting last week as well. Just reading some numbers if you're still doubting on the under 2.5, because that is my best play for this game as well. Juve has hit the over 2.5 just once in their last 5 games. Napoli just two in the last 5 games. If you want to get just a big plus sign, you can hit Juve +1. I don't think they lose by more than a goal here, just because of what you mentioned. As good as Napoli has been, Juve just has not been giving up goals. But probably, if you're going to go solo, you go under 2.5. And if
Yeah.
you are confident that Napoli wins this, you combine them together and you hit a pretty nice plus money parlay there.
hmm And then on top of it, I think it's important to note if Kim Min Jae of Napoli isn't able to go, this has been the best defender in the league this season. Saw him star for South Korea. If he doesn't show up in this match, if he isn't ready to go, which is it might be a possibility, then it really turns on its head. Again, Juve don't create too many chances, so don't get spooked out and try and go with over 2.5 in this. I
Mhm.
think it probably makes you more inclined to take that Juve +1 because again, +1 number, there's no hook in this. I think that's very
Yeah.
valuable in this sport, and that's something to be said. So again, I like where you're looking over there as well.
So I'm 1 for 1 in terms of him not calling me crazy. That's a good start. We're gonna shift over now. Let's head over to England. We have a couple games to cover. We're gonna start with the Manchester Derby. This is Saturday at 7:30 a.m. So grab your coffee, shake off whatever you did the night before, and get up because this is gonna be a really good game. You have a red hot Manchester United team that has really turned their season around, has been one of the best, if not the best team, honestly, in the Prem over the last couple of weeks, or in play at least. And then City, who has just absolutely dominated them in the Derby and hasn't been all too bad themselves. Obviously, that is sarcastic. They have been very good. Martino, tell me how much of history you're putting into this one, because City has dominated over the last couple of meetings. And just tell me what you think from two really good squads.
Yeah, the history basically started in 2010, right? Because anything before that's just all Manchester United. We're both Mets
Yeah.
fans. It's essentially Yankees Mets at this point. But again,
For me.
it's interesting with City because we mentioned Carabao Cup. It depends on how much stock you put into that competition. We've seen FA
Mhm.
Cup, Carabao Cup, and this is always the talk around English sides: is how many competitions, how many do they care about? 0 shots on target midweek.
Mhm.
For me, it's like, will City do that again? My answer is no. I really trust him in this. United have played them a little bit better as of recently, but make no mistake about it, City is head and shoulders above. They can't afford to lose or drop points in this one as far as City goes, because again, if you think about it, they're still behind Arsenal, despite Erling Haaland being on record historic pace that we've
Mhm.
never seen in this league, where he already has 20 goals at the halfway point through the season. For me, this is about City taking over this game because they have to. Not because, it's this type of game of, bragging rights that a lot of people like to point towards. And anything can happen in a derby. For me, I love City on the money line, -115. There isn't that much juice whatsoever for a favorite like this. And again,
Mhm.
over 1.5 in this game with City money line, we're talking about +120 is not that bad. It's just two legs. You're not really stressing too much, and it's reasonable. 2 goals
Mhm.
is reasonable with the amount of firepower in this game. Um, so for me, that's where I've been looking with the total like 2.5. It's kind of sketch considering what we saw midweek, and at times United can struggle with scoring. But again, all bets are off in this type of game.
Yeah, in terms of goal difference, correct me if I'm wrong, but United is pretty far down in terms of the top five, and what we see there. And we
Yeah,
already know obviously what
yeah,
City can do on the offensive end. I'm going to preface my picks by saying I am not telling you to put all of these together in a same game parlay, but I'm also not telling you not to put them all together in a same game parlay. But if you do, make sure you're using OddsCheckers, Odds Grid to make sure you're getting the best value and you know exactly which sports book to use. Martino, I'm going to start reading these legs off to you, because there's a very real scenario where this happens.
yeah.
I'm not saying it's a lock. I'm not saying it's not a lock, though. So we have City money line. I'm starting on the same place as you, -115. Both teams to score at -143. You mentioned United struggling to score at times, but I think when you get a quote unquote vulnerable City squad, considering what happened midweek, I think obviously City is very fired up. I'd be looking into markets for City to score first as well. But I think United has as much enough firepower, and for as hot as they have been, and how important this game is, because they're tied right now and they want to secure a spot for the champions as well, and even make a run for the championship for the title of the Prem. I think both teams get on the scoreboard here. That's at -143. And then the over of 2.5, which is a little risky, but obviously you can't combine both teams to score in over 1.5 at -138. So if you just go with that, you get to +428 at Unibet. You can get that at 414 at Caesars or 386 on FanDuel, which is why you always use the grid. Um, Now, if you add in a Holland goal, which you mentioned, if you live under a rock, he's quite good. at soccer. He's quite good at scoring goals and what he does. It's at minus 110, but if you add that on top of all that, you get to plus 899. On a scale of 1 to 10, how crazy am I for taking that?
2. I mean,
Okay.
again, the way I look at it is just like, what kind of results do you see happening? And with this, you're essentially saying I could see 2-1 win with Holland scoring for City.
Yeah,
And you're like,
that's
yeah, that's possible. And then you're like,
mhm.
oh, you can get it at almost plus 900 essentially. You're like, oh, okay, well then that's great, and it is great. So for me, again, process right there, picking out value, combining it, and again,
Mhm.
it's nothing crazy. You don't even
Yeah.
have a leg in here that's at least minus 200. Everything is under minus 150. That's insane. And
Mhm.
again, this is the type of stuff that you can get value wise in the US compared to the rest of the world. Because again, we always like to talk about it during the World Cup and on this show. Scoring markets are wild. Minus 110
Yeah.
for a guy who's having statistically the greatest pace ever in Premier League history. Yeah, go do it. Go do it, man. Like, what else do you have to know about it? It's like James Harden
Yeah.
averaging 35 points per season, and you're getting a prop saying, oh, James Harden 30 plus points at like minus 120. Yeah. Like, if he's
I'm trying
averaging
to
that
think.
much, you know?
I'm trying to think of an equivalent for like an anytime touchdown score because it's not like an Austin Eckler that's automatic, but that's about the odds that you're getting it at.
I mean,
Honestly.
Gronk in his prime, we're talking about the best weapon that you could ever see. Really,
Mhm.
this is in the modern era of the Premier League, this is the best team, Pep
Mhm.
City, with the amount of accomplishments they have domestically. Now they arguably get the greatest striker in league history outside of Thierry Henry. Henry plays different, but as a pure goal scorer, I mean, at this point, the rate
I'm
that
not
he's going
disagreeing,
at,
but whoa.
I mean, under the age of 24, like there's nobody. I mean, he's on
Yeah.
pace to shatter every top player that has played in this league already in his first season. Usually everyone takes time to adapt. This guy doesn't
Mhm.
need time. He's a freak of nature. And so yeah, I mean, there is no equivalent to Erling Haaland. He is his own man. It's incredible to see. And again, in a derby like this guy turns up in these types of
Mhm.
matches. He has that type of alpha mentality that you like to see in some of these superstars. So Holland in general, man. I mean, I think it's kind of malpractice not to bet him to score in the Premier League at this point. Seriously, like what
I'll
are we
take it.
looking at? Worst case is minus 110. Sue
Uh
me.
huh.
Like it's all right if I lose that. I'm okay with
Yeah,
it.
I'll call me a sucker if I fall for it. We got two games down. You haven't called me crazy yet, so good start. Our last game is another derby. It's the North London derby between the Tottenham Spurs and the current Premier League leading Arsenal Gunners, which is weird to say. I imagine we won't be saying it for all too long if history is any indicator here. Sue me if you're an Arsenal fan. Arsenal are favorites here. This game's at Sunday at 11:30. This also a big game. Spurs have not by form, but in terms of just scoring and defense, just have been struggling a little bit recently. But this is a top five matchup. So tell me what you're thinking here, because Arsenal's, I believe, last I checked, is minus is a minus favorite in this game.
Yeah, they were around like the minus 115 area for
Uh-huh.
this. Again, if you guys don't know, this is the North London Derby. This is one of the bigger derbies in all of England. Heated rivalry. Heated rivalry. I think this could liken to Cowboys and Eagles if you really want to go down to it. Just the
They
way
do
their
not like
fans, no, they do not like each other, and it goes deep into the fan base. It's incredible. And again, it's just one part of the city of London, by the way.
Mhm.
So again, away. This is Spurs. Spurs are just insane. I mean, we don't, in terms of just like trying to read them, Antonio Conte is probably the most volatile manager that you will ever find in this sport. I never understood the fit here. Son has been struggling all season long.
Mhm.
They've been very inconsistent defensively, blowing leads. Spurs are really just that type of team that steps up and dominates the lesser sides. And when it comes to these type of moments and matches in which they need to step up in and get a result to propel themselves into the top four or get into a title chase, Spurs usually fall flat. Again, they're hosting this. I think that's important to note as well. But for me, it's Arsenal. I think over 2.5 in this. I think they've been doing a good job of creating without Gabriel Jesus. I think they've
Hmm.
proven that at this point against the types of teams that they play against. Arsenal and over 1.5 is pretty decent value at Caesars at plus 170. And if you go to over 2.5, if that's something that you like, then you're at plus 280. That's really not far fetched whatsoever. I think this is
Hmm.
certainly possible. And for me, this is the Bukayo Saka show. I think Arsenal have the best wingers in this league with him and Martinelli. This is the type of match that he takes over. I'm not saying put him down for an anytime goal scorer, but I think if you look at the market for goal scorer or assist from him, that's something I really love as well. That's just on the side, like a single play. But again, for me, I really like Arsenal in this. I think they've turned a new page again. They could easily lose this. Conte can get his guys riled up for this type of match. He's that type of motivator. It's usually sometimes a singular performance, but when Antonio Conte is in multiple competitions, that's when you start to see his teams regress. That's why he won the league with Chelsea. They had nothing else to focus on. With
Hmm.
Spurs, there's so many different things on top of it being Spurs. So
Doesn't
I'm an
help.
Arsenal guy. I'm an Arsenal guy when it comes to this one. And again, this is the spot. Pressure's on. City plays the day before. City get a result. Then what? Because again,
Yeah.
when we look at the bookies for futures, City, despite being in second, are almost minus 200 to win the league. So again, Arsenal knows pressure's on.
Yeah, and I actually checked Arsenal's money line as of this morning was actually at 120. That's plus 120.
So it
So
shifted
that's
on me already.
yeah, so that's interesting value if you just want to jump on that. Little worrying, but if you want to call yourself a sucker, it's not a bad one to fall for. I liked Arsenal on the money line and over 2.5 as well, or if you want to play it a little safer at over 1.5. These are two of the top fives, or the two of the top three, I believe, scoring teams in the Prem this season. Two top five teams on the table. But the Spurs have been a little susceptible to some weak defense. I'm not saying I'm going for this. I'm just my theme of the show today is just throwing random, just really risky bets at you and seeing if you're just gonna blow me off completely. You haven't done it yet. This one might be it. Arsenal to win to nil plus 310.
No, I mean it's not great. I don't know why you think I say this. You're making me out to be like this villain. No, I mean again, it's not crazy. We're talking about Antonio Conte sides are they can
Hmm.
put in great defensive performances. I don't think he has the talent for it. That's really the problem here. And again, Arsenal is so sharp in defense. If Son continues to struggle, I think Kulusevski has been one of their more reliable and consistent players on Spurs. For me, it's just a lack of trust with them. I really don't. Almost any single time that they need a big match to step up in, I think if you see a result from Spurs, it's a draw. I would be pretty surprised if we see a win here. I think if you want to look at something in terms of results with that, yeah, you could see a draw. I think this is going to be a low scoring, grinded out type of match. And if one team is winning this match in a high scoring output, it's going to be Arsenal. Because then that just means if it's wide open, Spurs have the worst defense. That's where things could start to go crazy and haywire. There's a goalkeeper advantage for Arsenal. There's a defensive advantage for Arsenal. Midfield is relatively even, and attack, despite no Jesus, I still lean Arsenal with the way Son has been playing. Because Son was top scorer last year. Now he's a shadow of himself. That's a big issue in a game like this.
Yeah.
Because again, like if you don't have to worry about a player like that, your focus shifts to Harry Kane. If Harry Kane is dropping a little bit deeper, like he does with England, then it proposes some of those problems. But again, plus 310, Arsenal win 1-0, 2-0. Why? It's not crazy. It's really not. So I see where you're coming from with this. I like how you look at these markets. But for me, derbies are just a little too haywire sometimes. You can't
Yeah.
really get the perfect read. There's multiple scenarios that could play out. That's why I kind of like to stick to totals in this one. But
Hmm.
again, I won't bash anyone that takes Arsenal in this.
Well, I appreciate that, and I do agree. Derbies are a little too volatile for this. So we have some Italian action and some English action for the weekend. Martino, as always, pleasure to have you on, and I'll talk to you next week for some more winning bets.
Can't wait for it.